My name is Jeffrey, a 35-year-old software architect who built my career from nothing but determination and hard work. I always chose to remain childless, focusing instead on my professional growth and financial stability. This past holiday season, I was actually looking forward to our annual family Christmas gathering until my father dropped a bomb that shattered everything. With a dismissive laugh, he declared, "We all voted for the school tax increase. Since you don't have kids, you'll pay for ours." As everyone erupted in laughter, I reached for my phone, hiding the pain in my eyes. Let me know where you all are watching from, and hit that like and subscribe button before I tell you how I made their perfect Christmas collapse around them. Growing up, money was always a touchy subject in my household. My parents were the type who lived well beyond their means, constantly juggling credit card bills and borrowing from one account to pay another. Our family appeared middle class on the surface, with a decent house in a respectable neighborhood, but behind closed doors, the financial stress was palpable. I remember the hushed arguments late at night about which bill to prioritize that month, and the frantic scrambling whenever an unexpected expense arose. These experiences gave me my first real financial education, not from what my parents taught me, but from watching what not to do. By 16, I was already saving most of what I earned from my weekend job at the local hardware store, determined never to experience the same anxiety I saw in my parents. After high school, I took a different path than many of my peers. Instead of taking on massive student loans for a prestigious university, I worked 2 jobs while attending community college. One as a barista in the mornings, and another stocking shelves at a grocery store on weekends. My days started at 5 a.m. and often ended well past midnight as I squeezed in studying between shifts. It was brutal, but I graduated with a computer science degree and, more importantly, without a single dollar of student debt. While my friends were celebrating their graduation with lavish trips funded by more loans, I was applying for entry-level programming jobs and continuing to save every penny possible. The tech industry proved to be my calling. I started as a junior developer at a small local firm that paid modestly but offered valuable experience. While others complained about the low starting salary, I saw it as an opportunity to learn and grow. I lived in a tiny studio apartment, drove a 15-year-old car, and put over 50% of my income into savings and investments. Year after year, I climbed the ladder through sheer determination and constant self-education. With each promotion or new position, I maintained my frugal lifestyle, watching my nest egg grow steadily. By 30, I had reached a senior architect position at a respected tech company, earning a salary that my younger self could hardly have imagined. Throughout this journey, I made a conscious choice to remain childless, partially because my career demanded extensive hours and travel, but also because I valued my financial independence and the freedom it provided. This decision wasn't made lightly or without consideration of the alternatives. I simply recognized that parenthood wasn't the right path for me, and I found fulfillment in other aspects of life. Of course, this choice made me something of an oddity in my family. My sister Amanda married young and quickly had 3 children, while my brother Thomas had 2 kids with his wife. Family gatherings inevitably included comments like, "Still waiting on you to settle down and have some kids," or, "Your biological clock is ticking." Despite my clear indications that parenthood wasn't in my plans, what my family never seemed to acknowledge was how my childless status had benefited them financially over the years. When Amanda called me in tears because she and her husband couldn't afford the private school tuition for their children, I stepped in without hesitation, covering thousands of dollars each semester. I never expected repayment, just appreciation for helping provide opportunities for my nieces and nephews. Then there was Thomas, who had lost his job during an economic downturn 3 years ago. His frantic call about possibly losing their house led to me temporarily covering his mortgage payments. 3 years later, I was still making those payments every month, despite Thomas having found new employment over 2 years ago. Somehow, the temporary arrangement had silently transformed into a permanent expectation. My parents, who had reached retirement age with woefully inadequate savings, also benefited from my financial success. I contributed substantially to their retirement fund, and even provided the down payment for their retirement condo. Without my assistance, they would have been forced to continue working well into their 70s or dramatically downsize their living situation. Beyond these ongoing commitments, I served as the family emergency fund. When unexpected medical bills, car repairs, or other crises arose, I was the first person they called, and I always came through, viewing it as both my responsibility and privilege to help the people I loved. Despite the occasional frustration with their financial choices, I genuinely loved my family. I never held their different life paths against them or judged them for having children they sometimes struggled to support. I respected their choices and only wished for the same respect in return, which is why I continued to be generous with both my time and money, expecting nothing but appreciation and basic consideration. Last Christmas, I went all out with gifts for everyone. For my parents, I purchased first-class tickets for the Caribbean cruise they had always dreamed about. For Amanda and her family, I bought the latest gaming system for the kids and spa packages for her and her husband. Thomas and his family received new laptops for each family member and gift cards to their favorite restaurants. I spent weeks selecting these thoughtful presents, excited to see their reactions on Christmas Day. As the holiday season approached, I looked forward to our annual family gathering. Despite our differences, I valued these moments of connection and warmth. Little did I know that this particular Christmas would fundamentally change my relationship with money, family, and self-respect forever. The day of our family Christmas gathering arrived with typical winter weather for the Midwest. A light dusting of snow covered the ground, making the drive to my parents' suburban home slightly slower than usual. Their house, a spacious 4-bedroom that I had helped them renovate just 2 years prior, looked picturesque with professional holiday decorations adorning the exterior. The large inflatable Santa and reindeer on the front lawn had been another of my gifts that had somehow become an expectation, rather than a generous gesture. I parked my car, noticeably more modest than my brother-in-law Paul's new luxury SUV or my sister's high-end minivan, and grabbed the carefully wrapped presents from my trunk. Despite earning significantly more than both of them combined, I maintained my habit of living below my means, driving a practical mid-size sedan that served my needs perfectly well. The moment I stepped through the door, my mother rushed to greet me, enveloping me in a warm hug that smelled of cinnamon and vanilla. "Jeffrey, we were wondering when you would get here," she exclaimed, taking some of the packages from my arms and ushering me inside. My young nieces and nephews swarmed around me, their excited voices overlapping as they asked about presents and peppered me with stories about school and friends. I genuinely enjoyed their company, finding their honesty and enthusiasm refreshing compared to the often calculated interactions of the adult world. I knelt down to their level, giving each child individual attention and answering their rapid-fire questions with patience. "Uncle Jeffrey, did you bring us something cool?" my brother's 7-year-old son asked, his eyes bright with anticipation. "Christmas is tomorrow, buddy," I reminded him gently. "But I think Santa might have gotten my letter about what you all wanted." The children squealed in delight before being called away by their parents, leaving me to join the adults in the living room. The space was impeccably decorated with high-end holiday ornaments and a towering real Christmas tree that must have cost several $100s. My father sat in his favorite leather recliner, nursing what appeared to be an expensive scotch from the crystal decanter set I had gifted him last birthday. "The prodigal son arrives," he announced, raising his glass in my direction but not bothering to stand. Busy saving the digital world while we mere mortals celebrate family time? I ignored the subtle jab and settled onto the sofa, accepting the glass of wine my mother offered. Traffic was a bit slow with the snow. "How is everyone doing?" The initial conversation flowed pleasantly enough, with updates about jobs, local gossip, and holiday plans. I noticed Paul, Amanda's husband, eyeing my watch during a lull in the conversation. "Is that the new Breitling?" he asked, nodding toward my wrist. "Must be nice having all that disposable income to throw around." Before I could respond, Amanda jumped in. "Not everyone has 3 tuitions to pay, honey." she said with a laugh that didn't quite reach her eyes. Some people get to spend their money on toys instead of children. I bit back the retort that I was actually paying those tuitions, not them, and simply smiled. It was a gift to myself for landing the Henderson project. First major account I brought in personally. The subtle shift in the atmosphere was palpable. Success within the family was acceptable only if it was accompanied by struggle or sacrifice. My achievements without the burden of children were somehow less worthy, less hard-earned in their eyes. The conversation eventually turned to local politics, a topic I typically avoided at family gatherings. My father, who had become increasingly involved in community issues since retirement, began discussing the recent vote to increase property taxes for school funding. The measure passed by a decent margin, he announced with obvious satisfaction. About time we invested properly in our local schools, instead of letting them deteriorate. Thomas nodded enthusiastically. We all went to vote together, made a whole day of it, even brought the kids along to see democracy in action. Good for them to see how the system works, I agreed, genuinely supportive of civic engagement regardless of political positions. Education funding is important. My father swirled his scotch, a smug smile forming on his lips as he exchanged glances with Thomas. We all voted for the school tax increase, he declared with a chuckle. Since you don't have kids, you'll pay for ours. The statement hung in the air for a moment before everyone except my mother erupted into laughter. The joke, if it could be called that, clearly at my expense. That is what people like you are for, right, Jeff? Thomas added, slapping his knee. Someone has to subsidize all us breeders. I felt as though I had been physically struck. The casual cruelty of the comment, delivered so offhandedly, made my chest tighten. These were the same people who had benefited from my generosity for years, without so much as a thank you card. The same people whose children's education I was literally funding out of my own pocket. The same brother whose mortgage I paid while he took luxury vacations. My expression must have remained neutral, because no one seemed to notice the impact of their words. No one except my mother, whose smile faltered as she caught my eye across the room, a flicker of concern crossing her face. I reached for my phone as it began to vibrate in my pocket, a convenient escape from the moment. Sorry, I need to take this, I said, standing and moving toward the hallway. Work emergency. As I stepped away from the living room, I heard my brother-in-law comment, always working, that one. No wonder he has no family of his own. In the quiet of the hallway, I stared at my silent phone, the screen showing nothing but the time and date. There was no call, no emergency, just a desperate need to escape the casual disdain of the people who were supposed to love me most in the world. The December air bit through my light jacket as I stood on my parents' front porch, pretending to be engaged in an important call. My breath formed small clouds in the cold, each exhale carrying away a little more of the shock and replacing it with a growing sense of clarity. For years, I had been the family financial safety net, the reliable resource they turned to without hesitation or apparent gratitude. Each instance played through my mind like scenes from a movie I had been too close to properly see. I remembered the late-night call from Amanda 3 years ago, her voice cracking as she explained that they couldn't make the private school tuition payments after Paul had decided to trade in their perfectly functional car for a luxury model with a hefty monthly payment. The kids love Westfield Academy, she had sobbed. It would break their hearts to leave their friends and teachers. Without hesitation, I had set up automatic payments to the school, assuring her that her children's education was important to me too. In the years since, there had never been a discussion about when or if they might resume responsibility for those payments. The tuition simply became another of my obligations, unacknowledged except when the payment date occasionally fell on a weekend, delaying the transfer by a day and prompting a concerned text from Amanda. Then there was Thomas and the temporary mortgage help. I could still picture him sitting at my kitchen table, documents spread out as he explained his layoff and their precarious financial situation. Just until I find something new, he had promised, eyes earnest and grateful. 3 months tops, then we will be back on our feet. That had been over 3 years ago. He had found new employment within 6 months, yet the mortgage assistance had never been mentioned again. Meanwhile, social media showed their family trips to Disney World and the new boat they had purchased last summer, somehow affordable despite their apparent inability to pay for their own home. My parents' retirement condo, a spacious 3-bedroom in an upscale community, had been another significant investment. The down payment I provided was supposed to be their cushion, allowing them to live comfortably on their modest retirement income and Social Security. Yet somehow they still needed regular supplements from me for property taxes, association fees, and the lifestyle they felt entitled to after working so hard all those years. Last summer's family vacation to the Outer Banks had been entirely my treat. A beachfront property large enough for all 14 family members, rental cars, grocery delivery, and even spending money for souvenirs. The thank yous had been effusive at the time, but quickly forgotten, replaced with comments about what we might do next year and how we should upgrade to the gold package for the beach equipment. As these memories washed over me, I realized something profound and disturbing. No one even said thank you anymore. My financial support had transformed from generous gifts into entitlements, expected and unacknowledged. I had become an ATM with a family name, valued more for my wallet than my personhood. I pulled up my financial advisor's contact information and hit the call button, this time initiating a real conversation. "Marcus, it's Jeffrey. I need to make some immediate changes to my disbursement accounts," I said without preamble when he answered. "Everything okay?" he asked, concern evident in his voice. Marcus had questioned the wisdom of my family financial support more than once over the years, always respecting my decisions, but never fully agreeing with them. "It will be," I replied firmly. "I need to stop all automatic transfers to the accounts we've designated as family support, effective immediately." The call lasted nearly 30 minutes as we restructured investments and redirected funds. By the time we finished, I had created a spreadsheet documenting every dollar I had provided to family members over the past 5 years. The total made me feel slightly nauseated. Not because of the amount itself, which I could certainly afford, but because of the complete lack of appreciation or respect it had purchased. When I returned to the gathering, I maintained a calm exterior while feeling fundamentally changed within. The rest of the evening, I observed my family with new eyes, noticing things I had previously chosen to ignore. The casual way Thomas mentioned his upcoming ski trip while still waiting for the job market to improve enough for a real salary. The designer purse Amanda carried while complaining about the cost of children's clothing. The expensive new golf clubs propped in the corner that my father must have purchased after our last conversation about his fixed income concerns. Everyone's lifestyle choices suddenly appeared in stark relief against the backdrop of their financial dependence on me. I had enabled a fantasy where they could live beyond their means indefinitely because good old Jeffrey, with no children or real responsibilities, would always fill the gaps. The decision crystallized as I watched Paul casually break a glass and laugh it off, knowing my parents would simply replace it without concern. I would not cut my family off entirely. That wasn't the kind of person I wanted to be. But the days of unlimited, unacknowledged support were over. It was time for some long overdue financial reality to enter their lives. As I smiled through dinner and participated in the evening's board games, no one could have guessed the seismic shift occurring within me. By the time I kissed my mother goodnight and promised to return early for Christmas morning gift opening, my plan was fully formed. The family bank was officially closed for business. The morning after the family gathering, I woke with absolute clarity and purpose. What had begun as hurt feelings had crystallized into a necessary recalibration of boundaries. I made coffee and opened my laptop, methodically executing the plan I had formulated the night before. First, I drafted an email to Westfield Academy's administration office, to whom it may concern. This email serves as formal notification that I will be discontinuing tuition payments for Alexandra, Emma, and Michael Taylor, effective immediately. The children's parents, Amanda and Paul Taylor, should be contacted directly regarding future payment arrangements. Please confirm receipt of this notice and remove my financial information from your system. Sincerely, Jeffrey Harmon. Next, I logged into my banking portal and canceled all automatic transfers to family accounts, including Thomas's mortgage payment, my parents' monthly supplement, and the various subscriptions and services I had been covering for years. Each cancellation sent a small notification email to the respective account holders, creating a digital trail of the changing financial landscape. The call to my financial advisor confirmed our conversation from the previous evening and initiated the restructuring of investments I had earmarked for family support. Instead, we created a new plan focusing on charitable education foundations and my own long-term security. By mid-morning, I had completed a comprehensive spreadsheet documenting all financial contributions to family members over the past 5 years. The total exceeded $350,000, a sum that even surprised me despite being well aware of each individual payment. Seeing it compiled into a single document was both sobering and validating. I had just finished reviewing this documentation when my phone began to ring. The caller ID showed Amanda's name, earlier than I had expected but not surprising. "Hello?" I answered, keeping my tone neutral. "Jeffrey, what the hell?" Amanda's voice was sharp with panic and anger. "I just got an email from Westfield saying you've discontinued the kids' tuition payments. There must be some mistake." "There's no mistake," I replied calmly. "I've decided to end my financial support." "You can't do that," she nearly shouted. "The winter semester starts in 3 weeks. Where am I supposed to get that kind of money on such short notice?" "The same place other parents do," I said. "Your household income." A moment of stunned silence followed before her voice returned, now trembling with what seemed like practiced distress. "Are you punishing my children because of something the adults said?" "That's incredibly petty, Jeffrey. I never thought you'd use money to hurt innocent kids." The manipulation tactic was transparent, but still effective at triggering a pang of guilt. I pushed it aside, reminding myself that the children's education was ultimately their parents' responsibility, not mine. "I'm not punishing anyone," I explained. "I'm simply ending voluntary financial support that was never meant to be permanent. You and Paul make more than enough to cover tuition if you adjust your spending priorities." "We can't possibly afford the tuition on our own," she insisted, conveniently forgetting their recent purchases and vacations. "The kids will have to leave Westfield. They'll lose all their friends, their activities, everything they know. Is that what you want?" "What I want is for my family to respect me as more than a convenient source of funding," I replied, surprised by my own steadiness. "Yesterday made it clear that isn't the case." "This is about Dad's stupid tax joke?" she scoffed. "You know he didn't mean anything by it. You can't seriously upend everyone's lives over a thoughtless comment." "It wasn't just the comment, Amanda. It was the laughter. It was the assumption. It was years of taking my help for granted while simultaneously devaluing my life choices." Her tone shifted to threatening. "If you do this, the kids won't see you anymore. Is that what you want? To be cut off from your nieces and nephew?" The emotional blackmail was exactly what I had expected, but still painful to hear. "That would be your choice, not mine," I replied. "I've always loved spending time with the children, and I hope to continue. But my relationship with them cannot be contingent on financial support." The call ended with Amanda hanging up, after declaring I would regret this decision. I had barely set down my phone when Thomas's name appeared on the screen. Rather than answer, I listened as his angry voice filled my voicemail. "What the actual hell, Jeff? The mortgage company just notified me that the automatic payment was canceled. You can't just pull the rug out from under us without warning. Call me back immediately." "This isn't funny." The message was followed by 3 more in quick succession, each more desperate and angry than the last, culminating in, "This is family, man. You have obligations. If this is about that stupid joke yesterday, get over yourself. No one meant anything by it." The text message chain with Paul, Amanda's husband, began as an attempt at mediation, but quickly devolved into thinly veiled threats about family access and reputation. My parents' call came just after noon, their confused and hurt voices a duet of disbelief. "Jeffrey, honey, there must be some mistake with the bank," my mother began. "Our supplement didn't come through this morning." "It's not a mistake," I explained gently, finding it hardest to be firm with her. I've decided to end the financial support I've been providing. My father's voice suddenly dominated the call. This is ridiculous. We were counting on that money for property taxes this quarter. I understand this is disappointing, I replied. But you receive Social Security and have your pension. The support was always meant to be supplemental, not essential. Is this about yesterday? My father demanded. Because if one little joke about taxes is going to make you act like a child, then maybe you need to grow up and develop a sense of humor. After all we've done for you, my mother added, her voice thick with emotion. How could you do this to us? The irony of that statement was almost laughable. After all they had done for me, I had been supporting them financially for years, enabling a retirement lifestyle far beyond what they had saved for. Yet somehow, I was still indebted to them in this narrative. As the day progressed, the family group chat exploded with activity as they compared notes and realized the scope of my financial withdrawal. The coordinated pressure campaign began in earnest, with messages flowing in from all directions, alternating between guilt, anger, demands, and occasional attempts at reconciliation. The kids will be devastated. We were counting on that money. After everything we've done for you, how could you do this to family? I maintained my silence, letting them process the new reality without further engagement. Their reactions only confirmed what I had already recognized. My value to them had become inextricably tied to my financial contributions, with little regard for my feelings or perspective. By evening, the tone of the messages had shifted from outraged disbelief to panicked problem-solving, with discussions about payment plans, loan options, and budget adjustments that should have happened years ago. The family that had laughed at my expense less than 24 hours earlier was now facing the consequences of taking my generosity for granted. 3 days after implementing my financial changes, I received a text from my mother requesting my presence at the family home that evening for an important discussion. The formal tone and lack of details made it obvious that this would be an intervention-style meeting, likely with all family members present and prepared to pressure me into reversing my decision. I considered declining, but ultimately decided that facing them directly would be both more respectful and more effective than continued silence. I responded with a simple, "I'll be there at 7," and spent the afternoon reviewing my financial documentation and preparing mentally for the confrontation. The scene upon my arrival was exactly as I had anticipated. My parents, Amanda and Paul, and Thomas and his wife Sarah were all seated in the living room, their expressions solemn and their postures tense. The children had been conveniently removed from the equation, presumably sent to friends' homes, to allow the adults to present a united front. "Jeffrey, thank you for coming," my father began, his tone carrying the formal authority he had used during childhood family meetings. "We've asked you here because we're concerned about your recent actions and the impact they're having on the entire family." I took a seat in the lone chair, positioned across from the group, recognizing the intentional isolation of the arrangement. "I appreciate your concern," I replied evenly. "I'm here to listen." My father launched into a clearly rehearsed speech about family obligations and responsibility, invoking traditions, shared blood, and the duty of those more fortunate to support their kin. The familiar manipulation tactics were transparent, but delivered with conviction. "When one member of this family has resources," he concluded, "those resources benefit everyone. That's how we've always operated." Amanda spoke next. Her presentation focused on the children's education and emotional well-being. She had brought printouts of school photos and achievement certificates, spreading them on the coffee table like exhibits in a trial. "Alexandra was just cast in the school play," she said, her voice catching theatrically. "Emma is finally thriving in their advanced math program after struggling last year. Michael just made the junior soccer team. Pulling them out now would be devastating." Thomas followed with a financial breakdown, complete with color-coded spreadsheets showing his income, expenses, and the glaring gap created by my withdrawal of mortgage support. The documents conveniently omitted any mention of discretionary spending or luxury purchases. "We literally cannot make ends meet without your help," he insisted, tapping the deficit column on his printout. The bank has already called about the missed payment. Our credit score will be destroyed. We could lose the house. One by one, they made their cases, each presentation more emotional and urgent than the last. My mother cried. Sarah spoke about the children's future. Paul emphasized community standing and reputation. The performances were impressive in their coordination and emotional manipulation. When everyone had finished, an expectant silence fell over the room. All eyes focused on me, waiting for the guilty capitulation that had always followed family pressure in the past. "May I speak now?" I asked quietly. My father gestured magnanimously. "Of course. We're here to listen." I reached into my messenger bag and removed a folder containing my own documentation. "I've compiled some information that I think provides important context for this discussion," I began, my voice steady despite the tension in the room. I laid out the first spreadsheet on the coffee table. This document shows the total financial contributions I've made to each family member over the past 5 years. As you can see, the combined amount exceeds $350,000. The numbers created the first crack in their united front, with Thomas and Paul exchanging uncomfortable glances. "This second document," I continued, placing another spreadsheet beside the first, "details significant purchases and expenses each of you have made while receiving my financial support." I looked directly at Thomas. "This includes your boat purchase last summer, the Disney World vacation, and the backyard renovation project." His face flushed red. "Those were different funds. The mortgage help was separate from our other finances." "Money is fungible," I replied simply. "Funds allocated to one area free up resources for others." I turned to Amanda and Paul. "Similarly, this section shows the luxury car lease, the country club membership, and the vacation property rental in Aspen from last winter. All while I paid for your children's education." Paul stood abruptly. "You're tracking our spending? That's invasive and controlling." "I'm observing publicly shared information," I corrected. "Social media posts, conversations at family gatherings, and statements made directly to me. I haven't accessed any private accounts." My mother reached for my hand across the coffee table. "Jeffrey, honey, we appreciate everything you've done. No one is denying your generosity, but family helps family. That's just how it works." "I agree completely," I nodded. "Family helps family. But help should be met with gratitude and respect, not entitlement and dismissal." I reached for my phone and placed it on the table. "I'd like you all to listen to something." Before anyone could object, I played the recording I had made during the previous family gathering. My father's voice filled the room, clear and unmistakable. "We all voted for the school tax increase. Since you don't have kids, you'll pay for ours." The recorded laughter that followed was jarring in the now silent room. Then Thomas's voice. "That is what people like you are for, right, Jeff? Someone has to subsidize all us breeders." I stopped the recording and looked around at their shocked expressions. "I'm not angry about this comment specifically," I explained calmly. "I'm responding to what it represents. Years of taking my support for granted, while simultaneously devaluing my life choices." The silence that followed was heavy with realization. My father was the first to recover, attempting to dismiss the recording with a wave of his hand. "It was just a joke, Jeffrey. For God's sake, you can't seriously be this sensitive. No one meant anything by it." "That's exactly the problem," I replied. "No one thought twice about it. No one considered how it might feel to be valued primarily as a financial resource rather than a family member." Amanda leaned forward, her expression softening into the sympathetic look she used when attempting to manage difficult clients in her therapy practice. "We value you for so much more than money, Jeffrey. You're an integral part of this family." "I want to believe that," I said, "but actions speak louder than words. And recently, the actions have consistently shown that my primary value lies in my wallet." "So, what exactly are you saying?" Thomas demanded. "You're just cutting everyone off permanently? Over one stupid comment?" "I'm not angry," I clarified. "And I'm not cutting anyone off. I'm simply ending the pattern of enabling financial irresponsibility that's developed over the years." I'm happy to help in genuine emergencies. I'm happy to contribute to education funds that are matched by parent contributions. But the days of unlimited, unacknowledged support are over. The unified front fractured completely at this point, with family members turning on each other in frustration. "This is your fault," Paul hissed at my father. "You and your big mouth about the tax vote. Don't you dare blame me," my father shot back. "You're the ones flaunting your luxury purchases while taking his money. We never asked for the tuition payments," Amanda protested, though the documentation clearly showed her tearful midnight call doing exactly that. "Everyone has benefited, and everyone has taken it for granted," I stated firmly, rising to my feet. "I'm not here to assign blame. I'm here to establish new boundaries." "And what about Christmas?" my mother asked, her voice small. "The children are expecting their gifts. We've already planned the whole celebration around your contribution." The guilt tactic was so transparent, it almost made me smile. "Christmas is in 4 days," I replied. "I think it's time for everyone to focus on the meaning of the holiday beyond material expectations." I gathered my documents and returned them to my bag, then moved toward the door. "I love this family, and I want healthy relationships with all of you. But those relationships can no longer be built on financial dependence." As I left, the arguments continued behind me, blame shifting between members as they processed the new reality. The drive home was surprisingly peaceful, a weight lifting from my shoulders despite the difficult conversation. For the first time in years, I felt my value as a person might eventually be recognized beyond my capacity as a financial resource. The week before Christmas unfolded dramatically as the full implications of my decision became increasingly apparent to each family member. What had initially seemed like a temporary protest or negotiating tactic was revealing itself as a permanent boundary change, forcing adjustments they were ill-prepared to make. Amanda was the first to face concrete consequences. I received a forwarded email from her containing correspondence with Westfield Academy. The school administration had offered a payment plan for the winter semester, but made it clear that full tuition would be required by February to maintain enrollment. The carefully worded message hinted at previous late payments, even when I had been covering the costs, suggesting financial disorganization beyond what I had realized. "This is what your stubbornness is causing," Amanda wrote alongside the forwarded email. "The kids will have to leave the only school they've ever known because of your tantrum." I responded simply, "There are excellent public schools in your district, ranked among the best in the state. Alternatively, the tuition is manageable within your current household income if other expenses are adjusted." Her reply was a single angry emoji. Thomas faced an even more immediate crisis. Without my contribution, his mortgage payment had become seriously delinquent. I learned through my mother that he and Sarah had engaged in a difficult all-night discussion about their finances, realizing for the first time how precariously they had been living. Thomas had to cancel the ski trip, my mother reported during one of her daily calls attempting to mediate the situation. Sarah was in tears. They had promised the children and already purchased the special equipment. "They purchased ski equipment before securing their housing payment?" I asked, genuinely puzzled by the financial decision-making. "Well, they assumed the mortgage situation would resolve itself," she replied, the absurdity of the statement apparently lost on her. "They never thought you would actually follow through with this." My parents were facing their own reckoning. The winter cruise I had gifted them, scheduled to depart on December 26th, remained paid for, but the spending money and excursions they had planned now seemed extravagant without my supplemental income. "Dad had to cancel the golf excursion in Jamaica," my mother lamented. "And I was so looking forward to the spa package. It just won't be the same experience now." The irony that the base cruise, worth thousands, remained intact while they focused on the lost extras was not lost on me. The sense of entitlement had become so deeply ingrained that genuine gratitude for the substantial gift was overshadowed by disappointment over peripherals. The family group chat, normally filled with holiday planning and coordination, had transformed into a space for communal commiseration and scaled-back expectations. "We're doing a potluck for Christmas dinner this year," my mother announced. "Everyone bring a dish to share and whatever beverages you want. We'll need to pool resources. Are we still doing the full gift exchange? Thomas's wife Sarah asked. We might need to implement a spending limit, or just focus on gifts for the kids. About that, Amanda chimed in. We should probably tell everyone that Christmas will be a little different this year. The kids may not get everything on their lists. The cascade of messages revealed just how extensively they had all been counting on my financial input for the holiday. Gifts I had never agreed to purchase had been promised to children. Plans had been made, assuming my wallet would, as always, fill in any gaps. The series of increasingly desperate calls and texts intensified as Christmas Eve approached. The emotional manipulation tactics escalated from subtle guilt to outright begging. The children made wish lists for Santa, Amanda texted on December 23rd. They're expecting the new gaming systems and designer winter coats. I don't have the heart to tell them Santa can't afford those things this year. Thomas tried a different approach, appealing to my sense of tradition. Remember how Mom and Dad always made sure we had amazing Christmases even when money was tight? Don't you want that for your nieces and nephews? Just help out one last time for the holiday. My parents, particularly my mother, employed direct emotional appeals. Christmas has always been about family coming together, she said during a tearful phone call. Please don't let a disagreement ruin the children's holiday. They're innocent in all this. Each message tested my resolve, triggering the helper instinct I had relied on for my sense of value within the family for so long. But alongside the guilt came a growing conviction that this boundary was necessary and ultimately beneficial for everyone involved, even if the transition was painful. Instead of simply ignoring these pleas or coldly refusing, I began developing an alternative plan. After consulting with several financial education specialists, I identified age-appropriate resources for each family member and put together a different kind of Christmas offering. Meanwhile, I prepared for my own modest Christmas celebration, reflecting my personal values rather than extravagance. I purchased thoughtful gifts for each family member, focused on meaning rather than monetary value, and prepared mentally for what would likely be a tense holiday gathering. The final emotional crescendo came on Christmas Eve morning, with a call from my mother that broke my heart despite my determination. Jeffrey, she said, her voice small and defeated in a way I had rarely heard. I'm literally begging you to reconsider, just until after Christmas. Our whole holiday is collapsing around us. The children will be devastated. Please, if you ever loved this family, help us just one more time. The raw desperation in her voice made my chest tight. I took a deep breath before responding. Mom, I love you all very much, I said gently. And because I love you, I need to do what's best in the long term, not what feels good in the moment. The financial patterns we've established aren't healthy for anyone. But Christmas, she whispered. Christmas isn't about expensive gifts or lavish celebrations, I reminded her. It's about connection and love. I'll be there tomorrow with gifts for everyone. They're just different kinds of gifts than in the past. The children won't understand that, she protested. They might understand more than you think, I suggested. And this is an opportunity to teach them what really matters. The call ended with my mother still unhappy, but perhaps beginning to accept the permanence of the change. I spent the evening wrapping my carefully selected gifts and preparing for what would undoubtedly be a Christmas unlike any other in our family's history. Christmas morning arrived with a clear sky and fresh blanket of snow, creating a picturesque holiday scene that contrasted with the emotional turbulence awaiting at my parents' home. I loaded my gifts into the car and drove through quiet streets, using the time to center myself for what would likely be a challenging day. When I arrived, the atmosphere was noticeably subdued compared to previous years. The children were still excited, of course, their innocent enthusiasm for Christmas morning undiminished by adult financial concerns. But the adults moved with tense energy, exchanging strained smiles and careful pleasantries. The living room had been decorated as beautifully as ever, but I noticed subtle differences. The mountain of presents under the tree was significantly smaller than in previous years, and the elaborate breakfast spread had been replaced by a simple selection of pastries and coffee. "Uncle Jeffrey!" my youngest niece called out, running to hug me as I entered. Her unconditional affection warmed my heart and reinforced my conviction that our relationships could transcend financial dynamics. Gift opening proceeded with forced cheerfulness from the adults. The children received far fewer presents than they had come to expect, and the gifts were notably more modest. Yet I observed with interest that their disappointment was fleeting, quickly replaced by genuine enjoyment of what they did receive. The catastrophe that my family had predicted seemed vastly overstated. When it came time for my gifts to be opened, an awkward hush fell over the adults. I had brought a large bag containing individually wrapped packages, but their size and weight made it clear they weren't the electronic devices or luxury items that had been anticipated. "I've chosen something different for everyone this year," I explained as I distributed the packages. "Something I hope will have lasting value." My youngest niece, 7-year-old Lily, was the first to open her gift, a colorfully illustrated book about saving money, along with a real piggy bank containing $20 in coins. Rather than the disappointment I half expected, her eyes lit up as she flipped through the pages. "Look, Mommy, this girl is saving for a bicycle, just like I want to do," she exclaimed, immediately connecting with the concept. For each of the older children, I had selected age-appropriate financial literacy books, paired with starter investment accounts in their names, each seeded with $500, and a structure that would match additional deposits they made from allowances or earnings. The adults received more sophisticated resources, personalized financial planning sessions with respected advisors, budgeting systems tailored to their specific situations, and books addressing the emotional aspects of money management. For my parents, I included information about a structured program to match retirement savings going forward rather than providing unaccountable supplements. The initial reception was mixed. Amanda stared at her financial planning voucher with thinly veiled disappointment. Thomas set his budgeting system aside without comment. My father huffed quietly, clearly viewing the gifts as some sort of statement rather than genuine offerings. "I thought we could all benefit from a more intentional approach to finances," I explained to the silent room. "I'm still committed to supporting this family, just in a more sustainable way. Financial literacy books aren't exactly what the kids were hoping for from their uncle," Amanda remarked, her tone sharp, despite the careful phrasing. To everyone's surprise, Lily looked up from her book with genuine enthusiasm. "I really like mine. It shows how to save up for things you want, instead of just asking for them. Can we start my saving chart today, Mom?" The innocent comment highlighted the very lesson I had hoped to convey, delivered more effectively through a child's honesty than any explanation I could offer. As the morning progressed, small shifts began to occur. Thomas pulled me aside during a quiet moment in the kitchen. "Look," he began awkwardly, "I'm still upset about how all this went down. But Sarah and I did have a long talk about our finances, and it wasn't pretty. I might actually need some help figuring out this budget thing. But not, in front of everyone." It was the first acknowledgement from any adult family member that the financial reset might have some merit beyond punishment. "I'd be happy to sit down with you next week," I offered. "The system actually has some great tools for getting started." My father remained distant throughout most of the day, but I noticed him leafing through the retirement planning materials when he thought no one was watching. My mother, perhaps the most adaptable of the group, began asking genuine questions about how the children's investment accounts worked during Christmas dinner. "So they really get additional money just for making deposits themselves?" she asked, intrigued by the concept. "It's a matching program," I explained. "It teaches the value of saving while also building a real foundation for their future. I'll match whatever they save, up to $50 a month." "That's actually quite generous," she acknowledged, her perspective shifting slightly. "And it teaches them responsibility, too." By the end of the day, the family had separated into two distinct camps: those who were cautiously exploring the new financial paradigm, and those who remained resentful of the changed dynamics. Amanda and Paul maintained a cool distance, clearly still hoping this was a phase that would pass. Thomas, Sarah, and my mother showed tentative openness to the new approach. My father wavered between the two positions, his pride warring with practical recognition of reality. The weeks that followed Christmas brought substantial changes to our family system. Amanda, despite her initial resistance, enrolled in a financial literacy class offered through her workplace. Whether motivated by genuine interest or determination to prove she didn't need my support, the education would benefit her regardless. Thomas created a realistic household budget for the first time in his adult life, revealing numerous areas where adjustments could create significant savings. "We've been hemorrhaging money on subscriptions we don't even use," he admitted during one of our weekly financial check-ins, "and eating out 4 times a week was killing us financially." My youngest niece, Lily, the unexpected champion of financial responsibility, started a small savings account with my guidance, diligently tracking her progress toward a new bicycle. Her enthusiasm influenced her cousins, who gradually became engaged with their own accounts and the concept of saving toward goals rather than expecting immediate gratification. Not every relationship healed smoothly. Paul maintained that I had deliberately humiliated the family and refused to engage with any of the financial resources. My father vacillated between grudging participation in the new approach and angry recriminations about abandoned responsibilities. Some wounds would take longer to heal than others. My own journey of emotional healing progressed alongside these family developments. I joined a support group for people setting financial boundaries with family, discovering that my situation was far from unique. Working through the lingering guilt and recognizing the manipulation tactics for what they were helped me maintain my resolve during difficult moments. The most profound realization came gradually. My worth as a family member had never actually been tied to financial support, despite the dynamics that had evolved. By stepping back from the role of provider, I created space for more authentic connections based on mutual respect rather than dependency. 6 months after that fateful Christmas, our family gathering for July 4th looked remarkably different from holidays past. Celebrations were more modest, but somehow more meaningful. Conversations focused on achievements and connections rather than possessions. The children spoke proudly of their saving goals, with Lily triumphantly arriving on her new bicycle that she had saved for herself, with matching contributions from me. Not everything was perfect. Financial strain remained a reality for some family members as they adjusted to living within their means. Occasional resentment surfaced during stressful moments. But underneath it all, a healthier foundation was forming, built on responsibility and respect rather than dependency and entitlement. The deepest lesson I learned through this journey was that true generosity includes boundaries. Financial support without accountability creates unhealthy dependence that ultimately harms both parties. Sometimes the most valuable gift we can give those we love is the opportunity to develop their own strength and capability. Family bonds based on mutual respect and genuine connection prove far more resilient than those maintained through financial obligation. The hardest decisions often lead to the most growth, even when the path includes painful moments of truth and necessary separation from comfortable patterns. As I reflect on the transformation within our family, I wonder how many others struggle with similar dynamics. Have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with loved ones? What was your experience with financial expectations in family relationships? Share your story in the comments below. And if this resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share with someone who might need to hear it. Thank you for joining me on this journey. And remember, sometimes the most loving action isn't the easiest one.